My name is Morgan, and last week, I dismantled my entire life in less than 48 hours. It wasn't a nervous breakdown. It wasn't a manic episode. It was a calculated demolition, executed with the same precision I use to analyze market trends for a living. But before I tell you how I burned the bridge to my family while standing on the other side, you need to understand the architecture of my solitude. I live in Chicago, in a one-bedroom apartment that most people would call sparse. I call it efficient. My furniture is secondhand, my wardrobe is functional, and I drive a 10-year-old Honda Civic that has seen more winters than it probably should have. To the outside world, specifically to my family back in Ohio, I am just Morgan, the boring older sister who works too much, has no husband, no kids, and apparently, no life. They see the old car. They don't see the investment portfolio. They see the brown bag lunches. They don't see the compound interest. At 32 years old, I have quietly amassed a net worth that would make my father choke on his morning coffee. $300,000. Most of it is locked away in retirement accounts and index funds, a fortress of solitude I built dollar by dollar to ensure that I would never, ever have to depend on anyone. Dependence is a trap. I learned that lesson young. It was a Tuesday evening when the first crack in the fortress appeared. I was sitting at my kitchen table, reviewing a proposal for my company's London expansion. My boss had hinted that the senior analyst position was mine if I wanted it. I was debating it. London was far. London was expensive. But London was also 3,000 miles away from the people who shared my DNA. My phone vibrated against the table. The screen lit up with a photo of a golden retriever puppy, my sister Layla's profile picture, not her actual dog, because she is allergic to responsibility. Below the puppy, the name Layla flashed with an ominous persistence. I stared at it. A call from Layla on a Tuesday meant one of three things. 1. She had broken up with Travis again. 2. She needed someone to co-sign something because her credit score was lower than her age. Or 3, the most likely scenario, she needed money. My thumb hovered over the decline button. I knew I should let it go to voicemail. I knew that answering this call would cost me something, maybe time, maybe sanity, maybe cash. But old habits die hard. The conditioning of 3 decades kicked in. I am the older sister. I am the responsible one. I am the safety net that catches them when they fall, even though they are the ones who keep jumping off the cliff. I picked up the phone. That was my first mistake. Hello? I said, keeping my voice flat. Morgan. Oh my God, I'm so glad you picked up. Layla's voice was high-pitched, breathless, a tone she reserved exclusively for when she wanted something. It was the vocal equivalent of a sugary glaze over a stale donut. What's going on, Layla? I asked. I didn't ask how she was. I went straight to the point. Why does something have to be going on? Can't a sister just call to say hi? She chirped. There was a pause, a beat of silence where I could practically hear her recalibrating. Okay, well, actually, there is something. But it's good news. Like, life-changing news. I waited. Mom and Dad want you to come home for dinner this weekend, she said. Travis and I have a huge announcement. We want the whole family together. It's going to be special. My stomach tightened. A special announcement usually meant a pregnancy or a wedding, neither of which required my presence unless they needed a check. But something about her tone felt off. It wasn't the joyous hysteria of a baby announcement. It was tense. Urgent. I can't, Layla, I said. I have work. I'm looking at a transfer to London, and I have to prep. London. She cut me off, her voice dropping the sweetness for a second. Why would you go to London? That's so far. Anyway, you can work on the plane. Please, Morgan. Mom is making her pot roast. Dad really wants you there. It's important. I closed my eyes and rubbed my temples. This was the trap. The invocation of Mom and Dad. I found myself flashing back to when I was 16. I had spent the entire summer flipping burgers at a grease pit to save $3,000 for a used Toyota. When I brought it home, my dad, Gregory, barely looked up from his newspaper. He just said, "Make sure you pay for your own insurance." 2 years later, when Layla turned 18, they bought her a brand new Ford Focus. Wrapped in a big red bow. When I asked why, my mother, Catherine, had smiled that sad, condescending smile of hers and said, "Morgan, you're a survivor. You figure things out. Layla, she needs a little more help. She's sensitive." Sensitive. That was the family code word for spoiled. "Fine," I said into the phone, snapping back to the present. "I'll drive down Saturday morning. But I have to leave by Sunday afternoon." "You're the best." Layla squealed. "Seriously, Morgan, you won't regret it. This is going to solve everything." She hung up before I could ask what everything meant. I stared at my phone, a cold dread settling in my chest. Solve everything? Layla and Travis had been living in a cycle of financial chaos for 5 years. He bounced between sales jobs, and she worked part-time as a receptionist at a yoga studio, spending the rest of her time curating an Instagram feed that made her look like a travel influencer. I looked back at the London proposal on my laptop. The cursor blinked at me, a rhythmic pulse. I should have stayed in Chicago. I should have booked a flight to England right then and there. But I didn't. I packed a bag, got into my high-mileage Honda, and drove 4 hours into the lion's den. The driveway of my childhood home was occupied by 2 cars, my parents' sensible sedan and a flashy, leased SUV that belonged to Travis. I parked my Honda on the street, noting the distinct hierarchy of vehicles. When I walked inside, the house smelled of rosemary and roasted beef. It was a scent that used to mean safety, but now just smelled like obligation. My mother, Catherine, met me at the door. She looked tired, her eyes tight at the corners, but she plastered on a smile and pulled me into a hug that felt more like a restraint than a greeting. "You look thin, Morgan," she said, pulling back to inspect me. "Are you eating? Or are you just hoarding your money like a dragon?" She laughed, but there was no humor in it. It was a dig. It was always a dig. "I'm fine, Mom," I said, stepping past her. In the living room, my father, Gregory, was sitting in his recliner, watching golf. He nodded at me. "Hey, kid." Layla and Travis were on the sofa, holding hands. They looked like they were vibrating with energy. Layla was wearing a designer dress I knew cost at least $300, and Travis was sporting a watch that was definitely not within his budget. We sat down to dinner. The table was set with the good china, the stuff usually reserved for Thanksgiving. My internal alarm bells went from a low hum to a deafening siren. Nobody brings out the gold-rimmed plates for a casual Saturday unless they are selling something. "So," Layla said halfway through the meal, disregarding her half-eaten potatoes. "I know you're all wondering why we gathered you here." I wasn't wondering. I was dreading. Travis cleared his throat. He was a smooth talker, a guy who peaked in high school and had been trying to chase that high ever since. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. "You guys know we've been looking for a forever home," he started. "A place to raise a family. A place that reflects who we are. Well, we found it." He pulled out his phone and swiped to a photo, holding it up for us to see. It was a sprawling colonial with pillars and a massive front lawn. It looked expensive. It looked like a house for a lawyer or a doctor, not a part-time receptionist and a guy who sold solar panels on commission. "It's in Oak Creek," Layla said, her eyes shining. 4 bedrooms. Granite kitchen. A sunroom. It's perfect. We put down a deposit. $20,000. I choked on my water. 20,000. Where did you get $20,000? I asked. Travis waved his hand dismissively. We scraped it together. Savings, a little help from friends. But here's the thing. The bank, they're being difficult. Difficult how? My father asked, his fork pausing halfway to his mouth. They're saying our debt-to-income ratio is slightly off, Travis said, minimizing the issue. It's a paperwork thing, really. But the sellers are impatient. If we don't close by next Friday, we lose the house. And we lose the deposit. The room went silent. I saw my mother look at my father. I saw Layla look at me. We need a bridge, Layla said softly. Just to get the mortgage approved. We need to show more liquidity. We need to make a larger down payment to bypass the ratio issue. How much? I asked. My voice was ice cold. Layla took a deep breath. $185,000. The number hung in the air like a guillotine blade. $185,000, I repeated. You want $185,000. It's not a gift. Travis interjected quickly. It's an investment. In family. Once we get the house and refinance in a year or two, we'll pay it back. With interest. I looked at my parents. They weren't shocked. They were staring at their plates. They knew. They already knew before I walked in the door. This wasn't an announcement. It was an ambush. I placed my silverware down on the china plate with a deliberate clink. I looked at Layla, really looked at her. She was 30 years old, yet she looked at me with the expectancy of a toddler waiting for a cookie. No, I said. The word was simple, quiet, and absolute. Layla's smile faltered. What? I said no, I repeated, louder this time. I don't have $185,000 lying around in a shoebox, Layla. That is an insane amount of money. Come on, Morgan, Travis scoffed, leaning back in his chair with a smirk that made my skin crawl. We know you have it. Mom told us about your accounts. You've been stashing cash away since you were 22. You drive that piece of junk car, you live in a tiny apartment, you're sitting on a goldmine. My head snapped toward my mother. You discuss my finances with them. Catherine flushed pink. We're a family, Morgan. We don't keep secrets. Layla and Travis are in a bind. They're going to lose their deposit. $20,000, gone. Can you imagine? That sounds like a personal problem, I said, my voice rising. You guys gambled with money you couldn't afford on a house you clearly can't afford. It's not gambling. Layla shouted, tears instantly springing to her eyes. It's our dream. Why are you so jealous? Just because you're alone and miserable doesn't mean you have to sabotage my happiness. Jealous? I laughed, a harsh, dry sound. I'm not jealous, Layla. I'm solvent. There's a difference. That money you're talking about. That's my retirement. That's my freedom. That is 10 years of working 60-hour weeks while you were backpacking through Europe on Dad's credit card. Morgan, my father boomed. His voice was deep, the voice of authority that used to make me freeze as a child. That is enough. Watch your tone with your sister. I stood up. I'm not giving them the money, Dad. Not a dime. If they want a house, they can buy one they can afford. Or maybe they can rent like the rest of the world. Layla was sobbing now, full theatrical heaving sobs into Travis's shoulder. Travis glared at me. You're selfish, you know that. You have all this money doing nothing, just sitting there, while your own flesh and blood is struggling to build a life. It's not doing nothing, I said, grabbing my purse. It's compounding. I turned to leave. Sit down, Morgan, my father commanded. We are not finished. I turned back at the doorway. Yes, we are. I came for dinner. I didn't come to be robbed. I walked out the front door. I expected someone to chase me. I expected my mom to run out and apologize. But as I marched to my car, the only sound I heard was the muffled shouting from inside the house. I got into my Honda, my hands shaking so hard I could barely put the key in the ignition. I drove away. I didn't go back to Chicago immediately. I pulled into a gas station parking lot 3 miles away and just sat there, breathing in the smell of gasoline and stale coffee, trying to stop my heart from hammering against my ribs. $185,000. They didn't ask. They demanded. They felt entitled to the sweat off my back. And as I sat there, under the flickering fluorescent lights of the gas station canopy, I realized something terrifying. They weren't going to stop at no. They were desperate. And desperate people are dangerous. Sunday morning in Chicago was usually my sanctuary. Coffee, a book, silence. But this Sunday, the silence felt heavy, charged with the static of the night before. I had driven back late, arriving at 2 a.m., fueled by adrenaline and rage. At 9 a.m., the siege began. My mother called. I watched the phone ring 3 times before answering. I knew I had to set boundaries, but ignoring her would only make her escalate to calling the police for a welfare check, a tactic she had used once when I didn't return a text for 6 hours. "Hello, Mom," I said. Morgan, her voice was thick, wet. She had been crying. I didn't sleep a wink last night. I just lay there staring at the ceiling, wondering where I went wrong. Here we go. The guilt trip. The weapon of choice for Catherine Carver. "Mom, I'm not having this conversation," I said firmly. "I thought I raised you to be kind," she continued, ignoring me. "I thought I raised you to value family above money." Layla is distraught. She's sick to her stomach. She's throwing up, Morgan. She's so stressed about losing this house. She shouldn't have put a deposit down on a house she couldn't pay for, I said. That's not my fault. It's just a loan. Mom wailed. A bridge loan. They'll pay you back. Why do you have to be so cruel? Do you hate your sister? I closed my eyes. A memory forced its way to the surface. I was 12. I had found a stray dog, a scruffy terrier mix I named Barnaby. I fed him, walked him, slept with him for 2 years. He was my only friend. Then, Layla turned 10 and decided she was slightly allergic because her eyes itched. Without telling me, my parents took Barnaby to the pound while I was at school. When I came home and cried, my mother had hugged me and said, "Don't be selfish, Morgan. Your sister's health comes first. You have to sacrifice for the people you love." That was the lesson. I sacrifice. Layla receives. "I don't hate her, Mom," I said, my voice trembling slightly. "But I love myself enough not to set my future on fire to keep her warm." "You're cold," she whispered. "Money has made you cold. If you don't help them, don't bother coming for Christmas." "I can't look at you right now." The line went dead. I sat on my couch, the phantom weight of a dog I lost 20 years ago pressing on my chest. She didn't ask if I was okay. She didn't ask how my drive was. I was just the ATM that had malfunctioned. By noon, the tactics shifted from maternal guilt to masculine aggression. My phone pinged with a text from Travis. "You need to rethink this, Morgan." "Seriously?" I didn't reply. 10 minutes later, "We know you have the money." We know about the Vanguard accounts. Don't make us get legal involved. I laughed out loud in my empty apartment. Legal? What were they going to sue me for? Being frugal. But then, the tone changed. It would be a shame if your company found out about some of your creative accounting. I know people, Morgan. I can make noise. I stared at the screen. Creative accounting. My tax returns were filed by a CPA with the precision of a surgeon. I paid every cent I owed. But the threat wasn't about truth, it was about reputation. Travis was implying he would try to ruin my career with rumors. But why? Why was he this aggressive? If it was just a house, they could walk away. They would lose the $20,000 deposit, yes, and that would sting, but it wouldn't ruin them. This level of desperation, the threats, the panic, it didn't match the situation. Something wasn't adding up. I looked at the number again. $185,000. It was a specific number. If they just needed a down payment boost, $50,000 would have sufficed. Why 185? I texted back, go ahead. Call my boss. But if you contact me again, I'm filing a harassment order. I blocked his number. But the anxiety was starting to gnaw at me. I wasn't dealing with rational people. I was dealing with cornered animals. Tuesday evening. 2 days after the dinner. I came home from work, exhausted. My plan was to order Thai food and finally send that email accepting the London job. I needed distance. Oceans of it. I unlocked my apartment door and froze. The lights were on. Sitting on my second-hand beige sofa were my parents and Layla. They had let themselves in. I stood in the doorway, my keys clutching into my palms so hard it hurt. How did you get in here? My mother stood up, smoothing her skirt. You gave me a spare key last year, remember? For emergencies. This isn't an emergency. I yelled. Get out. Get out of my apartment. Morgan, please, Layla said. She looked terrible. Her eyes were puffy, her hair unwashed. We just want to talk. We want to compromise. There is no compromise. I shouted. I threw my bag on the floor. You people are insane. You break into my home. We're doing an intervention, my father said, standing up. He looked smaller in my apartment than he did in his own house. You are hoarding wealth, Morgan. It's a sickness. You live like a pauper when you could be helping your family. We're here to help you let go. Help me let go of my money. I asked, incredulous. Is that what you call it? We prepared a payment plan, Travis said, walking out of my kitchen. He had been eating my chips. I felt a surge of violation so intense I saw red. Travis, put the bag down and get out, I hissed. Look, Travis said, holding up a piece of paper. You sign the transfer for the $185,000. We sign a promissory note. We pay you back $500 a month. I did the math in my head instantly. $500 a month. It would take them 308 years to pay me back. Without interest. I walked over to my mother, held out my hand. Key. Now. Morgan, she started. Key. I screamed. It was a sound I didn't know I could make. A primal roar of 30 years of being the second choice, the doormat, the bank. She flinched and dropped the key into my hand. I walked to the door and held it open. Leave. If you are not out in 30 seconds, I am calling the police. And I will press charges for trespassing. I don't care if we share blood. I will put you in jail. They looked at me. They saw something in my face they had never seen before. The good daughter was dead. They filed out, one by one. Layla was crying again. My father spat on the floor of the hallway as he passed me. I slammed the door. I locked the deadbolt. Then I slid the chain lock. Then I pushed a heavy chair against the door. I sank to the floor, shaking. They were escalating. Breaking and entering. This wasn't about a house anymore. This was a raid. If you are enjoying this story and want to support the channel, please hit that like button and subscribe. Also, leave a comment telling me which city you are listening from. Every comment helps this video reach more people. Thank you so much. Sleep was impossible that night. Every creak of the floorboards sounded like footsteps. I sat up in bed at 3 a.m., my laptop glowing in the dark. I had changed the locks on my door physically, but now I needed to secure my digital life. I started changing passwords. Email, banking, investment portals. I changed them to complex strings of characters that no one could guess. Dog name 123 became X7 #MP9 $VL2. As I was logging into my primary bank's portal, the one I use for my daily checking, I decided to check the Linked Accounts tab. I rarely looked at it. It usually just listed my external savings. But there was an old account listed there. A student saver, joint account from when I was 19 in college. My parents had opened it with me to transfer rent money. I hadn't used it in a decade. I thought I had closed it, or at least that it was dormant. I clicked on it. My breath hitched. The balance was $12. But the transaction history was active. Very active. There were monthly transfers in from an external source I didn't recognize, followed immediately by transfers out to State Farm Insurance. I clicked deeper. The transfers out were for $150 a month. For 5 years. I pulled up the details. The insurance policy number. It wasn't mine. It was for a 2019 Ford Escape. Travis's car. My parents had been using an old account with my name on it to funnel money to pay for Travis's car insurance. But where was the money coming from? I traced the incoming transfers. They were coming from a custodial savings account at a local credit union in Ohio. An account my grandmother had set up for me when I was a baby. I had forgotten it existed. I thought it was empty. My hands trembled as I realized what had happened. My parents had access to that custodial account. They had been draining it, slowly, month by month, laundering it through my old student account to pay Layla and Travis's bills, keeping their hands clean. I felt sick. Physically sick. It wasn't just the money, about $9,000 over 5 years. It was the violation. They were using my identity, my name, as a conduit for their favoritism. But if they were doing this, what else were they doing? The next morning, I didn't go to work. I called Sylvia. Sylvia was a forensic accountant I had met through work. She was 55, wore sharp blazers, and had eyes that could spot a missing decimal point from across a room. I sat in her office, clutching a cup of lukewarm coffee. Find everything, I told her. Run my social security number. Run my name. I want to know every single financial instrument attached to me. Sylvia didn't ask questions about family drama. She just typed. It took her 2 hours. The silence in the office was broken only by the clicking of her keyboard and the hum of the air conditioner. Okay, Morgan, Sylvia said finally, turning her monitor toward me. Here's the landscape. She pointed to a line item. You have a credit card with Chase. Opened 3 years ago. Limit is $30,000. I shook my head. No, I don't. I only have Amex and Visa through my bank. Sylvia adjusted her glasses. Well, you have a Chase Sapphire. And it has an authorized user. Layla Carver. The room spun. Current balance? I asked, my voice a whisper. $24,800, Sylvia read. Mostly travel, luxury retail, and a lot of cash advances at casinos. Casinos. Wait, I said. Cash advances? Yes. Look here. Sylvia clicked a tab. MGM Grand Detroit. Jack Cleveland Casino. Online betting platforms like DraftKings. I stared at the screen. The transactions were relentless. 500 here. 1,000 there. And the payments? I asked. Minimum payments only, Sylvia said. Paid from, let's see, a checking account in the name of Gregory Carver. My father was making minimum payments on a card Layla was using to gamble, a card opened in my name to hide the debt from, whom? The bank? Or just to ruin my credit instead of theirs? This is identity theft, Morgan, Sylvia said softly. Your mother or sister likely forged your signature to open this. Given the address is your parents' house, they intercepted the mail. I sat back in the chair. The puzzle pieces slammed together. The urgency. The $185,000. The closing costs. They weren't buying a house. Or maybe they were trying to, but the bank had seen this debt, this massive gambling debt, and rejected them. Or worse, the debt sharks were circling. That $185,000 wasn't for equity. It was a bailout. They were trying to get me to pay off Layla and Travis's gambling losses under the guise of a dream home. They were going to take my retirement money, pour it into a black hole of debt, and I would never have seen a dime of it again. Morgan? Sylvia asked. Do you want to file a police report? I looked at the screen. At the years of betrayal quantified in rows and columns. Not yet, I said. First, I need to secure my exit. I left Sylvia's office with a thick file folder. I had the evidence. Now I needed the confirmation. I went home and did what I should have done years ago. I hired a digital investigator, a fancy term for a guy I found online who could dig up dirt on social media and public records. I paid him $500 for a rush job on Travis. By 4 p.m., I had the report. Travis wasn't just a casual gambler. He was in deep. There were liens against his car. There was a judgment from a small claims court for an unpaid personal loan. And, most damning of all, there were forum posts linked to his username discussing strategies for paying off bookies. The timeline matched perfectly. The aggressive text messages. The desperation. He wasn't afraid of losing a house. He was afraid for his knees. And Layla. She knew. She had to know. The credit card usage showed she was right there with him at the casinos. She wasn't the victim, she was the accomplice. My parents were enabling this. They were covering it up, making minimum payments, stealing from my childhood savings to patch the holes in the sinking ship that was Layla's life. And when the ship finally started to go under for real, they decided to throw me overboard to use as a raft. I felt a cold clarity wash over me. The sadness was gone. The guilt was gone. All that was left was strategic precision. I picked up my phone and called my boss. Is the London offer still on the table? I asked. Yes, he said, sounding surprised. But I thought you needed time to think. I don't. I take it. But I have a condition. I need to be on a plane within 48 hours. I'll work from the London office starting Monday. Morgan, that's incredibly fast. HR needs to expedite it, I said. Please. It's a safety issue. He heard the seriousness in my voice. Okay. I'll make the calls. Pack your bags. I hung up. I looked around my apartment. I listed my furniture on Facebook Marketplace for dirt cheap prices, must go today. I called a junk removal service for the rest. I packed 2 suitcases. I was erasing Morgan Carver of Chicago. Wednesday and Thursday were a blur of logistics. I sold my car to CarMax for cash. I broke my lease, paying the penalty without blinking. I transferred every single cent of my liquid assets into an international bank account Sylvia had recommended, one that my family couldn't touch, couldn't see, couldn't even imagine. I didn't answer my phone. I had 47 missed calls from my mother. 12 texts from Layla. 6 from Travis. They were panicking. Friday was the deadline for the house. They needed the money by tomorrow. I watched the notifications roll in like storm waves crashing against a lighthouse. I felt safe inside my fortress. On Thursday night, I sat on the floor of my empty apartment. My flight was at 6 p.m. on Friday. I had one final move to make. I needed to make sure they couldn't follow me. Not physically, but financially. I needed to burn the bridge so thoroughly that not even ash remained. I opened the files Sylvia had given me. The fraud report forms were filled out. I just needed to sign them. If I signed these, Layla would be investigated for credit card fraud. My parents would be implicated for identity theft. Travis would be exposed. It was the nuclear option. I hesitated. For a moment, just a moment, I saw Layla as a toddler, holding my hand crossing the street. I saw my dad teaching me to ride a bike. Then I saw the text from Travis threatening my job. I saw my mom handing me the spare key with hatred in her eyes. I saw the credit card bill with $5,000 spent at a casino on the day of my 30th birthday, a birthday they had forgotten. I picked up the pen. I signed. Friday morning. The day of the deadline. I woke up in a hotel near O'Hare Airport. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. It was a text from my father. It was 8 a.m. He must have been up all night. I opened the message. Morgan. This is your last chance. Transfer the $185,000 to the routing number below by 5 p.m. today. If you do not, you are no longer my daughter. I will write you out of the will. You will be dead to us. Do the right thing. I stared at the screen. Write me out of the will. It was laughable. They had nothing to leave me but debt and bad habits. But the phrase, "you will be dead to us," struck a chord. It was what they wanted, really. They didn't want a daughter. They wanted a resource. If the resource wouldn't yield, it was useless to them. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. I had already done the right thing. I showered, dressed in my travel clothes, and checked out of the hotel. I took an Uber to the nearest Chase Bank branch. I had an appointment at 9 a.m. I sat across from the branch manager, a woman named Mrs. Higgins. She looked concerned as I laid out the documents Sylvia had prepared. I am reporting unauthorized activity on a credit card opened in my name, I said clearly. I am also reporting fraudulent transfers from a custodial account. Mrs. Higgins looked at the names on the list. These are family members. Yes, I said. My sister, Layla Carver, and my parents, Gregory and Catherine Carver. I did not authorize any of this. I want to press charges. I want the card frozen immediately. And I want an investigation launched. Mrs. Higgins nodded slowly. Once we file this, Miss Carver, it triggers an automatic police referral because of the amount. It's over $25,000. This is a felony-level fraud. I know, I said. File it. She typed into her computer. It took 10 minutes. Okay, she said. The card is frozen. The fraud alert is active. Any attempt to use this card will be declined. The credit bureaus will be notified within the hour. Thank you, I said. I walked out of the bank. It was done. At that exact moment, in Ohio, Layla was probably trying to finalize the closing, or, more likely, trying to withdraw cash to pay a loan shark. I imagined the scene. The card declined. The red letters on the screen. The confusion. The call to the bank. The realization that the account wasn't just empty, it was a crime scene. My phone started ringing. It was Layla. I let it ring. Then Dad. I let it ring. Then Travis. I let it ring. I checked my watch. 10:30 a.m. My flight was in 7 hours. I had plenty of time. I went to the airport. I checked my bags. I went through security. I sat at the gate, watching the planes take off and land. The phone kept buzzing. It was relentless. Voicemails were piling up. I listened to one, just out of morbid curiosity. It was my father. He wasn't booming anymore. He sounded scared. Morgan, the bank says there's a fraud alert. Layla the police are asking questions. You have to call them. Tell them it was a mistake. Tell them you gave her permission. Morgan, pick up the phone. You're going to ruin her. I deleted the voicemail. I wasn't ruining her. I was letting her experience consequences for the first time in her life. I was simply stepping out of the way and letting gravity take over. Boarding began at 5:15 p.m. I stood in line, holding my passport. My thumb hovered over the group chat, the one named Carver family, that usually consisted of Layla posting memes and Mom asking what time I'd be home for holidays. I decided to send one final message. I needed them to know. I didn't want them to think I had disappeared. I wanted them to know I had escaped. I typed. I saw the credit card statements. I saw the gambling debts. I saw the transfers from my student account. I went to the bank this morning and reported it all as fraud. The police will be in touch. I chose the "don't come back" option you gave me, Dad. I'm gone. Do not look for me. I hit send. Then, I did something I had seen in movies but never thought I'd actually do. I took a SIM card removal tool out of my wallet. I popped the tray open. I took out the tiny chip that connected me to their world. I snapped it in half. I walked over to a trash can near the gate and dropped the pieces in. I handed my boarding pass to the attendant. Have a nice flight to London, Miss Carver, she said. Thank you, I said. I think I will. I walked down the jet bridge. I didn't look back. I didn't cry. I felt lighter than I had ever felt in my life. The anchor was cut. The ship was finally sailing. It has been 1 year since I landed at Heathrow. London is grey and rainy, and I absolutely love it. I have a flat in Islington with a view of a small park. I have a job that challenges me and colleagues who respect me. I even have a boyfriend, a British architect named Julian, who insists on splitting every bill because he says, partnership means equal footing. It's a strange sensation, being loved without conditions. I'm still getting used to it. I didn't completely disappear from the world, just from them. But news travels. Sylvia keeps me updated occasionally. The fallout was spectacular. When the fraud report hit, the house of cards collapsed instantly. Layla was arrested. Because it was a first offense and family-related, she managed to avoid prison time by pleading guilty to a lesser charge, but she has a felony record now. No bank will touch her. She can't rent an apartment. She had to move back in with Mom and Dad. Travis? He ran. When the loan sharks realized the money wasn't coming, things got ugly. He divorced Layla and disappeared, leaving her with half of his debt. My parents suffered the most, perhaps. To pay for Layla's legal defense and to settle the immediate debts to keep her out of jail, they had to liquidate their own assets. They sold the house I grew up in, the house they were so proud of. They are now living in a 2-bedroom rental apartment on the bad side of town. My father lost his seat on the church council. Small towns talk. Everyone knows that the perfect Carver family was built on theft and lies. The shame, I hear, has aged him 10 years. I received a letter last week. It was forwarded by my old company headquarters. It was from a lawyer representing my parents. It wasn't a lawsuit. It was a plea. They wanted to know if I would consider mediation to restore family ties. The letter mentioned that Mom cries for me every day. I sat in my local coffee shop, reading the letter. I watched the rain slide down the window pane. I thought about the $185,000. I thought about the dog they gave away. I thought about the fraud. They didn't miss me. They missed the buffer. They missed the fixer. They missed the bank. I took a sip of my Earl Grey tea. I folded the letter neatly. I walked over to the fireplace in the corner of the shop, a decorative little thing with real flames. I tossed the letter in. I watched the paper curl and blacken, the words turning to ash. Was I wrong? That's the question that sometimes whispers to me at night. Was I wrong to destroy their lives to save my own? Should I have given them the money, accepted the loss, and kept the peace? Then I look at my life now. I look at my bank account, safe and growing. I look at Julian. I look at the woman in the mirror who no longer carries the weight of 3 other adults on her shoulders. And I realize something profound. I didn't destroy their lives. They did. I just stopped letting them use my life as the mortar to hold their crumbling bricks together. I walked out of the coffee shop and into the London rain, pulling my coat tight. I was alone, but for the first time in 33 years, I wasn't lonely. I was free. So, I have to ask you. Looking back at the ruins of what used to be my family, was I wrong for choosing myself? Or should I have let them drag me down with them? Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story of liberation, please hit that like button and subscribe for more daily Reddit drama. Let me know in the comments, would you have signed the fraud report? See you in the next video. The hearing was in August. It was a hot, humid day. We sat in the family court. The judge was a stern woman with glasses on the end of her nose. Judge Patterson. Lorraine took the stand. She put on the performance of a lifetime. She cried. She spoke about baking cookies with Gavin, never happened. She spoke about reading him bedtime stories, never happened. She is keeping my grandson from me. Lorraine sobbed. It's elderly abuse. Then it was our turn. Mr. Henderson stood up. Your Honor, he said. We have only one piece of evidence we would like to play for the court. He set up a monitor. He played the video. The courtroom was silent. On the screen, the chaos of Christmas morning played out. The pile of gifts for the other kids. The laughter. Then the camera panned to Gavin. Sitting alone. Hands folded. Waiting. Then my voice from the video, you got Gavin nothing. And Lorraine's voice, I forgot. He's solitary. He doesn't need toys. Judge Patterson watched it twice. Her face was unreadable. Then Mr. Henderson submitted the spreadsheet of gifts. 48-0. He submitted the text logs. The Facebook messages calling Gavin boring. Lorraine's lawyer tried to object, claiming it was taken out of context. Judge Patterson raised her hand. Sit down, counselor. She turned to my parents. Mr. and Mrs. Miller, she said. Her voice was ice cold. In my 20 years on the bench, I have seen many sad cases. But I have rarely seen such a documented display of callous indifference to a child. Lorraine stood up. But Your Honor, we love him. It was one mistake. The judge slammed her gavel. It was not a mistake, Mrs. Miller. It was a pattern. You do not have a relationship with this child. You have a relationship with the idea of being grandparents, but you have failed in the execution. She looked at me. Ms. Moore, the petition is dismissed with prejudice. That means they cannot refile. You are granted a permanent restraining order preventing them from contacting the child until he is 18. Thank you, Your Honor, I whispered. My mother collapsed into her chair, sobbing loudly. My father turned purple. As I walked out of the courtroom, I felt 10 pounds lighter. I walked past them. I didn't look at them. They were just people in a hallway. Strangers. I got in my car and drove straight to Gavin's school. I picked him up early. Where are we going? He asked. To get ice cream, I said. And then to the Science Museum. Is it a special occasion? He asked. Yes, I said. It's Independence Day. 3 years passed. Gavin turned 10, then 11. We were happy. Our life was quiet, but it was full. Gavin joined a robotics club. He made friends, real friends who liked him for his quiet intelligence. He laughed more. The shadow of being the forgotten one faded, replaced by the confidence of a boy who knew he was the center of his mother's world. I heard about my family through the grapevine, mostly Aunt Joyce. Without my financial support, the house of cards collapsed. Dad's truck never got fixed properly. He sold it at a loss. Mom couldn't afford her weekly hair appointments or her shopping sprees. But the biggest blow was Courtney. Apparently, Travis, the entrepreneur, left her for a 20-year-old barista. They got divorced. Courtney, having no job and 3 high-maintenance kids, had to move back in with Mom and Dad. The golden child was now living in the basement with the golden grandchildren. Joyce told me it was a war zone. The kids were teenagers now, and they were angry. They had been spoiled rotten, and now that the money was gone, they were tearing the house apart. Lorraine was miserable. She had created monsters, and now she had to live with them. One day, I received a letter in the mail. The handwriting was shaky. It was from Dad. Meredith, I'm writing this because your mother isn't doing well. Her blood pressure is up. I have prediabetes. We are old, Meredith. We don't have much time left. We forgive you for what happened. We are willing to put the past behind us. We want to see Gavin. He must be a big boy now. Please, call us. We need help with the heating bill this winter. It's going to be a cold one. Love, Dad. I stood over my kitchen sink holding the letter. We forgive you. The arrogance. They forgave me. For protecting my son. And then the pivot. We need help with the heating bill. It was never about love. It was always about the utility. I was the heater. I was the wallet. I took a lighter from the drawer. I lit the corner of the envelope. I watched the flame eat the paper. I watched the words, love, Dad, turn into black ash and crumble into the sink. I washed the ash away with water. Mom. Gavin walked into the kitchen. He was taller now, almost up to my shoulder. What are you burning? Just some junk mail, buddy, I said. Do you want pizza for dinner? Pepperoni? He asked. Double pepperoni, I agreed. 2 years later, Lorraine died. Massive heart attack. Courtney called me. It was the first time we had spoken in 5 years. She's gone, Meredith, she screamed into the phone. Are you happy? You killed her. The stress of missing you killed her. I held the phone away from my ear. Courtney, she died because she ate fried food every day and refused to take her medication. You have to come to the funeral, Courtney demanded. You have to pay for it. Mom wanted a big service. Lilies. A mahogany casket. It's going to be $10,000. I paused. I looked out the window. It was a beautiful, clear night. No, I said. No? What do you mean no? I mean I'm not coming. And I'm not paying. But people will talk. Courtney shrieked. What do I tell people? Tell them the truth, I said. Tell them she invested in the wrong child. I hung up. I didn't go. I didn't send flowers. On the day of the funeral, I took Gavin on a trip. We drove 3 hours to a dark sky park, a place where there is zero light pollution. There was a real observatory there. We stood on the top of a hill, the wind whipping around us. The sky was a blanket of diamonds. It was breathtaking. Gavin looked through the massive telescope. I see Saturn. He shouted. I see the rings. Mom, look. I looked. It was beautiful. A distinct, perfect planet floating in the darkness. Gavin turned to me. His face was glowing in the red light of the observatory. You know, he said thoughtfully. I used to wonder if she watched me from up there. Grandma. And now? I asked. Now I think the stars are too busy burning to worry about people who didn't know how to look up. I wrapped my arm around him. You're wise, Gavin. Mom. Yeah. Thanks for choosing me. I know it was hard. I know you lost them because of me. I turned him to face me. I gripped his shoulders. Listen to me, Gavin. I didn't lose anything. I discarded things that were weighing us down. You are the prize. You were always the prize. Choosing you was the easiest thing I ever did. He hugged me. We stayed there until midnight, watching the universe spin above us. I thought about my mother, in her expensive casket that Courtney probably couldn't afford, surrounded by people who only loved her when she was buying them things. And I stood there with my son, in the cold, with nothing but the stars and our integrity. I felt peace. Real, deep peace. They say blood is thicker than water. But they forget the full quote, the blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb. The family you choose is stronger than the family you are born into. I chose Gavin. And I would do it again in a heartbeat. So, am I the asshole for refusing to lend my dad money and letting my mother die thinking I hated her, just because she forgot a few presents? Thank you for listening to this story. If you believe I did the right thing, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for more stories of justice. See you in the next video.